Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Church of Los Alamos. My name is Elisa Enriquez, and I am a worship associate here. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people and gather together in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your life's journey this morning, you are welcome here. I'm very pleased to announce that today we have the Rabbi Jack Shlachter with us to speak to us about anti-Semitism, the world's oldest hate. And I want to extend a special welcome to any visitors or first-time guests here among us this morning. If you would like, you can pick up a welcome packet out in the front and talk to one of us after the service. Next Sunday serves as our new Reverend Tina DeYo's first Sunday as our minister. So I want to remind you of that. And new parents are welcome to speak with her, or actually our new director of religious education, and that's Tara Height, and she will be starting as well next week. All are invited to join us after service for coffee and conversation in the fellowship hall. Before we begin, please silence your cell phones, center yourselves, and take a deep breath as we begin our service.
Good morning. We light this flame to remind us love is the center. As we grow and connect, love remains the center. When the light of truth burns all else away, love remains.
Please stand as you're able and join in singing number 214 in the hymnal. Please remain standing for our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony, thus doing covenant with each and with all. Candles of community have been lit today for more love and less hate, for the fires or putting them out in California, for the difficult decisions we face, for all the pain and beauty we experience. May we find love in this place, love in our hearts, love for the broken down, love for the lonely, love for those yet to feel whole, love for those in between, love for those out of our reach. May we find love, add love, and be love in this world. Amen. Please join in singing meditation hymn number 95. All right, now if the young and young in heart could join Patrick Webb and I up here. We have a special story to share with you. The story is called The Shattering of the Vessels. At the beginning of time, before anything else at all existed, love was all there was, and it filled up everything in the whole universe. But love got bored and lonely. There was no one to be in love with. So one day, love decided to make a world. First, it took a deep breath. Can you take a deep breath? How deep? Let me see. Love got all squished up, taking the deepest breath ever, and was so squished that it squeezed out darkness. The darkness was all around, thick and shiny and black. It was beautiful, but now love couldn't see anything. Love waved its arms and legs around, but the darkness was everywhere.
I have to do something about this,
said love. It thought for a minute and tried to think of the most wonderful, beautiful, warm thoughts ever. Love thought harder and harder, and all of a sudden, love called out,
I want light.
And pop! All of the warm and wonderful and beautiful thoughts exploded outward in 10 different directions and shaped themselves into 10 big glowing glass balls. Each ball was filled with a spinning lump of pure light and warmth. Some of the spare good thoughts that couldn't quite fit in the glass became dust and water vapor and seeds and molecules that could form animals. And love said,
This is amazing. I better make something for the light to shine on.
So it waved its arms and kicked its leg, and all of the dust and water vapor and molecules that had been scattered around when the glass balls began to form into another huge ball, this one of dirt and water and plants and animals. Love called this the earth. The 10 balls of light started toward the earth, and if they had made it here in one piece, the entire planet would have been exactly the way love wanted it. But the glass balls were too fragile to contain such strong, powerful, wonderful good thoughts. They broke open and shattered, and all the good thoughts shattered and flew out like sparks and were scattered like sand, like seeds, like stars. Those sparks fell everywhere on the earth in tiny bits instead of big clumps, like love intended.
Oh, no!
Said love.
I'm too big. I'll never be able to find all of those tiny sparks. I have to make one more thing.
So love waved its arms and kicked its feet one last time, and people appeared on the earth. They didn't know it, but they were created with one job, to find these sparks, these tiny pieces of wonderful goodness, and to bring them together again in big clumps.
When enough clumps are there, I will recreate the big glass containers to hold them, and this time I will set them down a little more carefully.
Love said. So all of us, from the time we are born, have a job. And that job is to help find love and more good and warm and wonderful things. If we do that, we are fixing the world.
Justice on An anti-Semite once declared without shame, "All our troubles come from the Jews." A Jew nearby responded, "Absolutely, from the Jews and the bicycle riders." "Bicycle riders? Why the bicycle riders?" asked the anti-Semite. "Why the Jews?" asked the Jew. I'm here to speak about anti-Semitism, or more accurately, Jew hatred. And I started off my remarks with a little bit of black humor, because there really isn't that much else humorous to talk about today. As I prepared for this talk, I got more and more saddened looking at statistics, looking at anecdotes. But I did find some consolation in the realization that when I look out at each and every one of you, I see either a potential or, more likely, an actual staunch ally in this millennial-long battle against anti-Semitism. So I offer in advance here my deep thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak today. And I'll just mention as an aside that yesterday I had the privilege of conducting over a bat mitzvah ceremony at the Los Alamos Jewish Center for a 13-year-old girl who had a coming-of-age ceremony. And that ceremony, we streamlined it. It was about 2 hours and 45 minutes long. So I'll try to keep this a little shorter today. But I also want to offer my thanks to two people that I'm going to call out. The first is Elisa Enriquez, who asked me if I would speak today. And on a personal note, Elisa was extremely supportive to me when I experienced some depression several years ago. So I'm forever indebted to her. And I also want to thank Nylea Butler-Moore, who provides me with an opportunity to experience joy on a Thursday night weekly basis during the academic year when I sing with Coro de Camera. Up front in these remarks, I have to mention that I'm not an expert on this topic. I started getting interested in the theme of anti-Semitism as I realized that the statistics were indicating alarming increases. This was before October 7th of 2023. And since then, of course, it's gotten much worse. So I'm not an expert on this topic. And I should also mention that these views are my own views. I'm not representing an organization or an institution. This is just my own perspective. Personally, I've been very fortunate in my life. I have not experienced very much anti-Semitism, but some recent events, I think, have been quite troubling. The swastika on the rock down in White Rock was hopefully just a one-off event. A congregant at my synagogue here in Los Alamos shared a photo with me of some anti-Semitic stickers that were placed on Israeli food products at the Smiths in Los Alamos, of all places. I mean, seriously. Another congregant told me that she got into a shouting match with someone about her support for Israel. Generally, however, I have to say Los Alamos remains a bastion of peace, but you don't have to go far away to see anti-Semitism in some of its ugliness. And here I'll mention Santa Fe, for example, where the scheduled concert by American singer, songwriter Matisyahu was canceled at Meow Wolf in an anti-Semitic act. The film Screams Before Silence was shown in Santa Fe just a few weeks ago. It was interrupted by protesters. The scheduled public talk in Santa Fe by the Israel Consul General from Houston was canceled by anti-Semitic protesters. And in Albuquerque, That list just keeps going on and on. So I hope that you can appreciate by the end of this is really my bottom line up front, that the fear and anxiety that Jews in this country, on campuses, in synagogues, and elsewhere, is real. It's tangible. It's sadly grounded in factual data that show an alarming rise in anti-Semitism. And I recently rode the subway in New York City. I was on that subway a week after some individual stepped into a subway car and demanded that Zionists identify themselves. This was during a protest over the Israel-Hamas war. That individual was photographed by somebody on the train. The police eventually found that individual, and the individual was charged with attempted coercion. But there I was riding a subway car wearing a definitive indication of my Jewish nature, a skull cap. And the entire time I was on the subway, I felt a bit nervous. I think that's really the bottom line, that this does not feel like the way we want the United States to be, where people are afraid to walk around and show their Jewish identity. There's an organization that I support called Jew Belong. It's really targeted at people much younger than me. Jew Belong was set up some years ago to try to bring alienated young Jews back into Judaism. And so they use quite edgy advertising, I would say. They were trying to grab the attention of the sort of 20s and 30s crowd. They pivoted over the last few years to really be focused on anti-Semitism. And one of those edgy advertising things that they used, a billboard, says, quote, "Let's ask everyone who is wondering if anti-Semitism is real to wear a yarmulke for a week and then report back." Well, I'm ready to report back. I don't think you would feel comfortable doing that. My younger brother lives in the Pacific Northwest, where there are large white supremacist populations. He rents an apartment. When he has people come in to work on his apartment, he removes all the signs that it's a Jewish apartment. So make no mistake, anti-Semitism is rising in this country. FBI statistics for 2022 say that more than half of all religious hate crimes in this country were targeted at Jews. Jews constitute 2% of the population of this country, and more than half the religious hate crimes were targeted at Jews. 2023 is the worst year on record for anti-Semitic incidents, according to the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL. There were a total of nearly 9,000 incidents reported across the United States, and over the past decade, the number has increased by more than an order of magnitude. A Gallup poll was conducted on July 1st, just a few weeks ago, and it reported that a majority of American Jews said they feel uncomfortable sharing their religious affiliation. What a sad statistic. A separate Gallup poll found that close to half of all Americans view anti-Semitism as a very serious problem. That's more than 5 times the number who responded that way the last time the question was posed about 20 years ago. 25% of American Jews have reported experiencing an anti-Semitic incident of some kind in 2023. Pro-Palestinian rallies have included, quote, expressions of support for terrorism against the state of Israel, with signs that say, again I will quote, burn Tel Aviv to the ground. My father-in-law lives in Tel Aviv. Somehow I take signs like that personally. When I speak to a Jewish crowd, I don't have to explain why my listeners should care, but you may well ask yourself, what does anti-Semitism have to do with me? I'm going to quote from Deborah Lipstadt. She is the United States Special Envoy for monitoring and combating anti-Semitism. She works in the State Department. And she said, quote, "Anti-Semitism is not just a threat for Jews. Even if you don't care about Jews, it's a threat to democracy." The late Chief Rabbi of the UK, Lord Jonathan Sacks, said, "Anti-Semitism is always an early warning sign of a dangerous dysfunction within a culture, because the hate that begins with Jews never ends with Jews." And others have likened anti-Semitism to a canary in a coal mine about the health of a society. And we should all be concerned, Jew and non-Jew alike, that anti-Semitism is a serious problem in the United States of America. Jews, as I said, are only 2% of the population of the United States. Worldwide, 0.2% of the population of the world. So Jews cannot solve this problem on our own. There aren't enough of us. And so I have been trying to give talks like this at various religious institutions in Los Alamos and Santa Fe because we need your help. That's really what I'm here to say. It's a problem. Jews experience this. Anxiety, maybe somewhat exaggerated, but like I say, walk around with one of these on your head for a while, and maybe you'll appreciate why we feel the way we do. It's, of course, not exclusively an American problem, but I don't think there's much that we can do to address problems outside our own location, our communities, our country. The Jewish teaching that is central for me is that all human beings are made in God's image. It's not that men are made in God's image or Jewish people are made in God's image. It's all human beings are made in God's image. And so, of course, what is happening in the Middle East is tragic. Every human life that's lost is a great tragedy. But we have to be realistic. The reaction in this country to the war between Israel and Hamas has a component of anti-Semitism to it. Synagogues around the country have been forced to ramp up their security. One of my rabbinic colleagues in Santa Fe refers to the cost that our synagogues pay out of pocket for security as the Jew hatred tax. That's a sad statement, in my opinion, about the United States in the 21st century. As a physicist, primarily receiving my income for many, many years from Los Alamos National Laboratory and doing rabbi work as a passion but not as my source of income, I've had the privilege to do a lot of itinerant rabbiing work. And for the Jewish high holidays, the fall high holidays last year, 2023, I went to Warsaw, Poland, where I led a congregation there for the high holidays. I had never been to Poland before. So I found myself in a country that experienced anti-Semitism on steroids. Poland's Jews had a 1,000-year-long history, and it ended abruptly in the Holocaust. This was a country that had 3 million Jews before World War II. Today, I'd be surprised if there are 1,000 Jews in the entire country. It's only just now, after 85 years, that the Jewish population worldwide has nearly reached parity with the pre-war value. One Warsaw congregant said to me, Our congregation, we are a remnant of a remnant. That really stuck with me. That's the ultimate end state of unbridled anti-Semitism. I don't think we want to go there. So let me spend some time talking about some definitions, because sometimes this can be helpful. So I want to start with anti-Semitism itself. It's a strange word, and there are questions about should we capitalize it? There are questions about should we hyphenate it? What does it even mean? The word was coined in 1879 by someone in Germany who wanted to delegitimize Jews. Jews had been emancipated by that point in 1879 in Germany, and Jews could be legitimate citizens of the country independent of religion. They could be good German citizens who happened to worship in a Jewish setting rather than a Christian setting. And he didn't think that that was the way things should be. Jews should still be discriminated against, but he couldn't do it by legitimate means. And so he coined this word anti-Semitism as a euphemistic substitute for Judenhass, for Jew hatred. But it's really a misnomer, because especially if you put a hyphen in there, it makes it seem like it's against something. And what is the something? Semitism. But Semitism doesn't really mean anything. This was just coined. Also, capitalizing it, I think, gives it more emphasis than it deserves, frankly. And so when I put the word in print, I usually put it in lowercase, and I usually leave the hyphen out, because it's not opposing Semitism. It's Jew hatred. When we get to official definitions of anti-Semitism, we can turn to an organization called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and their plenary, called the IHRA plenary or the IRA plenary, decided in 2016 to adopt a working definition of anti-Semitism, and it is as follows. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism can be directed toward Jews or non-Jews and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions, and towards religious facilities. This IRA definition was initiated by a former Swedish prime minister, and there are 35 member countries in the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and each of them recognizes that international political coordination is imperative to strengthen the moral commitment of societies and to combat growing Holocaust denial, distortion, and anti-Semitism. So the plenary went on to give some examples of anti-Semitism in a bulletized list. The first example is calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of a radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. So when I prepared these remarks, which was not a fun exercise, by the way, I read the Hamas Charter of 1988, and I read the Hamas Revised Charter of 2017. And if you read that after reading the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, I think it is quite clear that anti-Semitism is baked into the Hamas Charter. There are other bullets in the IRA list, examples of anti-Semitism, denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. That is an IRA example of anti-Semitism. Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. It both demeans the Holocaust and is a form of anti-Semitism. Applying double standards by requiring of Israel a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation, and holding Jews collectively responsible for actions of the state of Israel. I am proud to say that our governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, signed an executive order in August of 2022 adopting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism for the state of New Mexico. But let me go on to a few more definitions. What about anti-Zionism? So Zionism is based on the word Zion, Sion in Hebrew, refers to the biblical land of Israel. And it emerged, Zionism as we understand it today, emerged in the late 19th century as a political movement to reestablish a Jewish state in Israel. And I say that carefully, to reestablish. That was the ancestral home of the Jewish people. Zionism today refers to support for the continued existence of Israel in the face of regular calls for its destruction or dissolution. Other countries generally do not face this kind of a challenge. This is a legitimate country, and yet people call for its elimination. By the IRA definition, that's really anti-Semitism. Rabbi David Zaslow, who wrote an article that provided me with a lot of the material for these definitions, says, quote, Zionism asserts the rights of the Jewish people to resettle in their ancient homeland. It is not a liberal or conservative movement. It does not identify with a particular political party. It simply asserts Israel's right to self-determination while granting equal rights to all its citizens. And its citizens are Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Druze, and secular. And it does not in any way preclude the claim of Palestinians to their own nation. Today, there are right-wing Zionists, left-wing Zionists, socialist Zionists, atheist Zionists, Zionists who are Christian, Zionists who are Muslim, Druze, Bedouin, Baha'i, Mormon. Just as Islam is the state religion in about 25 countries, Christianity is the state religion in 15 countries, Buddhism is the state religion in 4 countries, Hinduism is the majority of faith in 3 countries, Judaism is the state religion of 1 country, Israel. So when someone says they are anti-Zionist, they often don't know that that is implying that Israel is not a legitimate nation, and they're working from a flawed definition of Zionism that's promoted by anti-Israel propagandists. Jubalong says that if somebody's opposition to specific Israeli laws or government policies is based on moral concern and political specifics, and if they're passionately interested in the human well-being of all concerned, then they're in the clear. Many Israelis have beef with their government policies. I would venture to guess that many of you have some beef with some policies of the United States. That doesn't make you an American hater. It's part of a democratic process. Another term that we often hear is the word genocide. Genocide is, quote, a crime where acts are committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. And for all that we might disagree about a particular Israeli policy, the tragedy that is unfolding in Gaza is not genocide. There is no attempt by Israel to destroy the Palestinian people. The war is between Israel and a terrorist organization called Hamas. The Arab population in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza has quadrupled since the end of World War II. If Israel is committing genocide against Arabs, it's doing a pretty bad job of it. To compare real genocides, and here you can think of the Holocaust, you can think of Armenia, you can think of Rwanda, Darfur. To compare that to the Israeli war against Hamas is inappropriate. Another term, apartheid. Apartheid is defined as any system or practice that separates people according to color, ethnicity, caste, etc. And if you look in Israel proper, approximately 25% of its citizens are not Jewish. And that includes about 20% who are Palestinians. If you travel to Israel, what you see, and I have been there many times, what you see is probably the most unapartheid, diverse, inclusive, and tolerant nation, certainly in that part of the world. Israel has a vital democracy that gives the citizens the right to vote, to assemble, to protest, to redress grievances in the courts. That's not true in other countries around there. But if you want to think about apartheid, think about South Africa up until the 1990s, and then compare that with Israel today. Another term that gets thrown around, colonization. Here we are in New Mexico. I just can't understand people throwing around the term colonization. Colonization is, quote, an act of political and economic domination involving the control of a country and its people by settlers from a foreign power. Jews have lived in that region even after their ill-fated war against Roman occupation 2,000 years ago, and the descendants of Jews who fled that war have been slowly returning to their ancient homeland throughout the 20 centuries or so that that land has been under Christian or Muslim occupation. Are Jews who survived pogroms, the Holocaust, expulsion from Arab countries, are these people you would call colonists? When the Americas were colonized by France, Spain, and England, those countries were foreign powers coming to exploit a foreign land. And when archaeologists uncover pre-Columbian ruins in America, I know this won't surprise you, they do not find French, Spanish, or British ruins. On the other hand, in Israel, when archaeologists do archaeology, they uncover Hebrew mosaics, ancient synagogues, Jewish ritual baths, and every other kind of cultural artifact of the Jewish people that date all the way up to 1948. Zionism is not a colonial enterprise. In fact, it's an anti-colonial enterprise. So, with these definitions in hand, you may then ask the question, as I do, what do we do about anti-Semitism? So I go back to Jew belong, which, as I said, is edgy, and I know that I'm not supposed to use bad language up here, so I will leave out a few words here. They say, when you sense that someone is being anti-Semitic, they probably are, call it the F out. Do not let people get away with it. And of course, that's a scary thing to do, but it's important. You should pick your battles, but don't pretend you didn't hear something anti-Semitic and let people get away with that. And the other thing is to educate yourself. Education is always a tool. And again, I'm deeply appreciative that you're willing to sit here for 2 hours and 45 minutes to educate yourselves on this. One can certainly advocate for the Palestinians and criticize Israeli actions. My wife and I were visiting my father-in-law in Tel Aviv, and it was before October 7th, but the government was in some turmoil, and we were there over a Saturday night when there were weekly demonstrations against the government because of proposed judicial reforms. And I said to my wife, you know, I've never been to a rally with 200,000 people. Let's see what that's like. It is totally acceptable to criticize a government and its actions and to advocate for Palestinians, but to do that without engaging in rhetoric that echoes and elevates age-old anti-Jewish tropes and conspiracies. So I'm going to close these remarks by returning to Deborah Lipstadt, who said, quote, "Anti-Semitism is an equal opportunity scourge. What's so frightening is that it is coming from everywhere, from right, left, center. It's the most ubiquitous form of hatred. It's not just the oldest, and it's akin to a virus that cannot be cured." And I'm quoting her, to be careful here. She said, quote, "Whether it is a former president trying to appeal to white nationalists with Hitlerian language like the word vermin, or it's far-left activists trying to delegitimize Israel, people will push narratives that they favor by referencing myths and stereotypes that many harbor against Jews." And social media is definitely exacerbating this situation. A little over a year ago, President Biden rolled out the first ever U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. He said, and I quote, "6 years ago, neo-Nazis marched from the shadows through Charlottesville, Virginia, chanting, 'Jews will not replace us.' With torches in hand, they spewed the same anti-Semitic bile and hate that were heard across Europe in the 1930s. What happened in Charlottesville, the horror of that moment, the violence that followed, and the threat it represented for American democracy caused the very soul of our nation to hang in the balance." And he said, this is about a year ago, "It's still hanging in the balance," and I would agree, it is still hanging in the balance today. But he went on to be a little optimistic. He said, "Together, we must acknowledge and confront the reality that anti-Semitism is rising, and loud voices are normalizing this venom, but we must never allow it to become normal. Anti-Semitism threatens not only the Jewish community, but all Americans. People who peddle these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and fuel racial, ethnic, and religious hatred against Jews, they also target other communities, Black and brown Americans, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, LGBTQI+ individuals, Muslim Americans, women and girls, and many others." Biden closed by saying, "The power lies within each of us to transform this story, to rise together against hate, to show the world who we are, and to restore the soul of America together." So they included within this strategy, the U.S. national strategy to counter anti-Semitism, several strategic goals. Strategic goal number 4.2 is to expand and mobilize multi-faith partnerships. And the goal says people of different faiths often come together to serve those in need, to exchange ideas, to stand in solidarity with one another, and to partner on public issues of shared concerns. And I can't think of another institution in Los Alamos with whom the Los Alamos Jewish Center feels a closer affinity than the Unitarian Church here. And so the goal says, throughout American history, Baptists and Buddhists, Jews and Jains, Mormons and Muslims, Sikhs and Seventh-day Adventists, and then I inserted Unitarians and unabashed Jews, that's the best I could do, have stood together countless times to advance principles of justice, civil rights for all, and some more Hebrew for you, tikkun olam, repairing the world. This kind of multi-faith cooperation is essential to countering the scourge of anti-Semitism and other forms of hate, discrimination, and bias. And it must be expanded and strengthened at this critical time in American history. Religious leaders and faith groups can and should lead this way. And it is with deep and sincere gratitude that I thank each and every one of you for helping lead the way and for inviting me to speak and to help fight anti-Semitism. Thank you.
As we prepare to return to our daily lives, it's time to give something of this congregation to the larger community of which we are a part. it's time for our offering. If this is your first time here with us, if you're visiting, we invite you to let the basket pass you by. You're a guest here, and we're glad you're with us. During this month, we are collecting funds for Tomorrow's Women, which is a nonprofit organization helping young women, Israeli and Palestinian women, become tomorrow's leaders. The offering will now be accepted. May what you give bring you joy and into deeper relationship with this community. Announcements can be found in your order of service, and we do have a special announcement, but I'll go ahead and get started. Next week is a very busy Sunday. Next Sunday is a very busy Sunday. Not only do we have Tina joining us as our minister, we also have Jim Scott leading the service. We will have a potluck immediately following the service, and Jim Scott will be providing beautiful music later on at 6 p.m. At 7 p.m. Sorry, in the order of service it says 6 p.m. At 7 p.m. Thank you, Rebecca. Please note that there's a truncated amount of time for the Back to School Backpack fundraiser that is being co-sponsored with, or at least we're working with Lutheran Family Services and Interfaith Los Alamos. Kelly Shea is here today. If you have questions, you have until August 4th to either donate backpacks with items or gift cards. Don't forget about the save the date for adult RE starting September 9th if you'd like to find out more about Foreign Policy Association's Great Decisions, Americans Global Affairs Discussion Program. Contact Dawn Morris for more information. We have an extra announcement that we'd like made. And one more thing, I also have a note here to help reduce food waste. Please take potatoes from the sharing table today. There's a lot of potatoes out there and they'll go bad, so please take some potatoes. One more announcement and then we'll join together from some singing.
Okay, just a quick announcement about Knife and Fork. As many of you know, Romery and I are facilitating Knife and Fork this year. If you don't know what it is, it's a social group that goes back to at least 1973 when I joined the church. I think it was during the 60s and maybe even the 50s. And it went away when COVID happened. In this group, members, which can be couples or singles, get together in groups of 4, hosted by a host. Each month, we try to mix up the people, so you get to meet a lot of others that are in the church that you may never see or never know. We're going to have a potluck for all the members on September 15th. This will be a get-together where we can meet and answer final questions. We're putting together a schedule, and I have it just about finalized. We're making little tweaks to it, but we'll try to get that schedule out. Because it's difficult to integrate new people, we can't Nobody can be a full-time member at this point. However, we need substitutes. Substitutes are people on a list that if someone in the regular membership can't attend a particular night, we can call on substitutes. We have 2 substitutes so far. If you're interested, please sign up. It's a good way to learn about the group and just socialize with people. I think that's it. Romery, did I forget anything? Okay, thank you.
Please rise as you're able to join in singing 318, We Would Be One. We extinguish this flame to remind us love is the center. As we explore and rest, engage and heal, love remains the center. When all we can see is cold ashes, love remains.